Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Sophie, Mary also. And hello, everybody. So today I would like to introduce you to our research state of the art and most recent activities we are performing in the oasis of Dumat al-Jandal and the region, the northern Arabia region of al-Jawf. So as Guillaume said, the project is under my direction since 2011, but actually the archaeological project of the University of Napoli L'Orientale in Saudi Arabia was inaugurated in 2009 by late Professor Alessandro De Maigret, who is here in the field during the first excavation season at the foot of the ancient acropolis of Dumat al-Jandal. But during the years, starting from 2010, many other collaborations took place, in particular, the one with the CNRS project led by Guillaume Charloux, who collaborated up to 2018 to the archaeological analysis with the excavation of the Western settlement in Dumat al-Jandal, as well as with surveys in the al-Jawf region devoted to the epigraphy of this important historical area. We also have collaboration with the Italian CNR, and we also had collaboration with the Louvre Museum. So the project, after 14 years of activities, is going to allow us to depict these ancient landscapes of northern Arabia, stretching from prehistoric period up to historical era, during which the oasis of Dumat al-Jandal emerged. Actually, the very first reason why this project took form was because Dumat al-Jandal was supposed to be the ancient Adummatu, quoted in the Assyrian sources during the 8th and 7th century BC. So the very first objective of this archaeological expedition was to focus the research within the historical core of Dumat al-Jandal, and an objective that was finally reached only 10 years later, between 2016 2017, when the first evidence connected to the 8th and 7th century BC emerged. But in the meanwhile, the research regarding this oasis was not limited to the very historical site itself, but also the main question of the origin of the oasis was considered. Thus, our studies proceed with the analysis of al-Jawf area, and in particular, the course of Wadi al-Sirhan and the location of Dumat al-Jandal between the Harrat al-Harra area to the north and the Nefud expanses to the south. So the research is also including, apart from this landscape perspective, also the connections between the ancient Mesopotamia. Right, because Adummatu is several times quoted in the Assyrian annals, our research aims also to recognize the plausible caravan routes linking these oases with Mesopotamia, and we can come on this later. So the project during the years, of course, involving also Saudi authorities. Back then, the Saudi Commission for Tourism and Antiquities, now Ministry of Cultures, is including, of course, excavation activities in the oasis, field surveys in the whole al-Jawf region, training programs devoted to our Saudi colleagues, as well as restoration activities for the preservation of the historical buildings from the oasis, and study of the materials, which is an important part of the project due to the building of a new local museum. Among these activities, so the one that we are developing also thanks, if I may, to the COVID pandemic, is the remote sensing geoarchaeological approach, working on satellite imagery and elaboration of false color imagery. We are trying, forced to stop the field activities, to implement as much as possible the remote sensing reconnaissance of the area, to develop geoarchaeological map of al-Jawf. So these lectures would like to introduce both the most recent result regarding the remote sensing activities, which involves, as I told you, especially the Arrat al-Harra, the northern part of the Wadi al-Sirhan course, but also the eastern area of al-Jawf leading to Mesopotamia, and partially also the al-Nefud. So these are the areas involved in the remote sensing activities. And the second part of the lecture will be devoted to the excavation and activities carried out within the historical core of Dumat al-Jandal, which is an oasis today surrounded by the modern city, but very well preserved, including the ancient Acropolis, where the Marid Castle stands, the late pre-Islamic and early Islamic fortress, the Hayat Dira village revolving around the Omar Mosque, and the ancient Nabatean settlement to the east of the Acropolis. So starting from the prehistoric activities, the remote sensing activities, which of course involved most of all the Holocene, Neolithic and Bronze Age phases, we deal with several landscapes in al-Jawf region. Not only the expanses of Arrat al-Harra to the north, but also different morphostructures south to Dumat al-Jandal, which are the Nefud al-Kabir desert and the Attawil formation, what is today called the Jebel Nejma. The very first activities related to remote sensing were inaugurated by our colleague, geomorphologist Bruno Marcolongo, who participate to the field activities starting from 2011, allowing us to collaborate with the Italian CNR, the National Research Council. With Bruno Marcolongo, thus we inaugurated the usage, the deep usage of a geoarchaeological approach by focusing on remote sensing and the analysis of false color imagery, as the one you can see here. This is a mosaic of false color elaboration created to stress the different colors, so the different soils of this region in search of evidence of a paleo landscape, integrated, of course, with data already available thanks to the Saudi Geological Service. So the very first, in 2011, the very first field survey that we performed was devoted to investigate the northern al-Nefud areas, in particular the interdunal areas in the vicinity of the modern village of Asfan, because here both remote sensing data and the Saudi Geological Survey data refer of a peculiar type of soils that allow us to identify paleo lakes, which is a common, of course, now it is well known, it's a common pattern that we also can, for example, observe in Jebel Qattar, in Juba. So it is first research devoted to investigate the interdunal areas of Asfan and the excavation of stratigraphic test probe in this area allow us to identify within northern al-Nefud stratigraphic sequences clearly testifies paleo lakes. So stratigraphic sequences characterized by paleo soil like clay deposit, followed by this white stratigraphic unit, which are diatomites, so lacustrian fossils, and then the Neolithic sediment and occupational phases. By this approach, so starting from the reconnaissance of false colors from remote, we were able to define a Neolithic panorama into the desert, characterized by nomadic community, which left abundant, extremely abundant lithic materials in this region, most of all scrappers and also cores. So we are in front of sites not only devoted to the production of tools, but also to the usage of this kind of tools. So community, nomadic community revolving around paleo lakes that can be dated, according to the Saudi Geological Service, to circa 10,000 to 8,000 years ago. So we are in the very core of the Holocene humid phase. This first picture of Al-Nefud Neolithic was then implemented thanks to the surveys conducted in the Attawil Formation, Jebel Nejma, a limestone formation characterized by these first architectonic structures that can be dated to the Neolithic period and that were recognized here for the first time starting from 2012. So this remote sensing approach was slowly allowing us to understand the development of landscapes before the emerging of the historical oases. And once again, we are during the middle Holocene moist phase in a context, a today dry context, of course, but characterized by this peculiar Attawil formation, which is an attractive point because of the abundance of materials for construction and also because of the intricate net of wadis and paleo lakes that are within and inside the Attawil formation. So the wall Attawil formation gave us something like 160 archaeological sites. Most of them are compound like this one, but also we have some tombs and 3 desert guides in this case. So the region was investigated partially on the field. Only for the moment, only test probes were conducted to get soil samples and flint materials, but nonetheless, both architecture and materials seems to confirm the date to the middle Holocene moist phase. And of course, the remote approach is quite interesting in this case because you can recognize how the main compound, the main archaeological sites follow the course of the main paleo wadi. So the aim was also to develop a model, a strategy model for landscape exploitation and to adopt this kind of approach in the northern Al-Harrat area, which is quite huge, quite more huge than the Attawil Formation. The Attawil Formation and Jebel Nejma is a 60 kilometers east-west formation, while the Harrat al-Harra is much wider. And so the approach in the Harrat al-Harra, which is again a volcanic lava field, which is part of the wider Harrat al-Sham, which includes also southern Jordan. The region is a 160 kilometer east-west oriented formation, extremely rich in archaeological sites, most of them Neolithic. Of course, this panorama is already known since 1927, when the British pilot Myland, going from Baghdad to Cairo, for the British Postal Service discovered these strange walls, and it was the first to see them from above. Since then, there are several ongoing projects for the mapping of these comprehensive territorial units. But in this case, we are trying to implement the archaeological record by adopt a geoarchaeological strategy based on the definition, immediate definition of paleo landscape by using this false color technology. So the procedure includes, of course, the considering of geological map at different scales in order to have an idea of the resources that may have attracted people, for example, flint, and then the overimposition of the false color imagery, in which every color corresponds to a peculiar kind of soil. So the lava field in black, for example, or the alluvial sediment in blue, or in the different pink shade, also the Aeolian sediment. By adopting this kind of imagery technology, we can easily identify the areas that has got the potential to host archaeological evidence. So the mapping of these sites is quite faster than by using common natural colors, RGB satellite imagery, even when they are of high definition. So like this, we can at first recognize which area can be considered, most of all the Harrat field, the lava field, the basaltic surfaces, and avoid to waste time in the other areas, the different colors characterized by most of all alluvial deposits, Aeolian deposits. So this model allowed us to define an extremely intricate scenario. Most of the survey was done in winter 2020 during the COVID pandemic. So in 1 month, the team was able to recognize more than 18,000 evidence, archaeological sites. And I will show you right now some examples. So also BA, bachelor and master degrees theses are ongoing and were done in order to implement this job, and maybe some of our students and collaborators are here, and now they can tell you something about this. The procedure, starting from the satellite imagery, most of all Landsat imagery, which has got a limited definition on the ground, but quite enough for regional studies. This kind of analysis goes on with the acquisition of detailed, of course, high definition satellite imagery, like this one, which is a CompSat high resolution image with pixels, geometric pixels of 30 centimeters square. So extremely high definition for preliminary topographic recording of this archaeological site. And then all of this data, in this case, these Neolithic pseudo or proto-villages, so these temporary structures that most probably are referred to semi-nomadic communities, intersect with the usage of desert kites. This model is going to define a quite complex landscape made of the intersection between anthropic evidence and the paleo landscape. So within the surfaces characterized by lava field, basaltic lava field, we can recognize also paleo wadi, sabkhas or paleo lakes, which are the main attractive point for these structures. Among the best preserved evidence, not only the compounds, we have also several desert kites. recording in the wall Arrat al-Harra. So what is interesting now is to go on with the analysis, trying to understand eventually stratigraphic sequences and the chronological issues, because apparently most of these structures are Neolithic evidence, as it is confirmed from excavation carried out recently in the region of Al-Ula, but from satellite view also many turret tombs or tumuli tombs can be identified. So also a Bronze Age and post-Neolithic phase can be contemplated. So right now, the whole GIS model in which every evidence, both anthropic that are visible here, but also paleohydrology of the region, allow us to define more than 18,000 archaeological sites. Most of them are concentrating along the Arrat al-Harra, but as you can see, we have still to the east some evidence. So the main archaeological sites, avoiding structures that need to be clarified, we can recognize the compounds or the agglomeration of compounds. So these proto-villages or pseudo-villages, so huge semi-permanent settlements characterized by these sort of compounds. Then we have the single compounds like this one, so structures characterized by the merging of some small circular structures, which are quite a lot, at least 4,000 units recorded. And then we have also single structures, so isolated shelters, most probably all along the area at a different distance from both compounds and proto-villages. So in a way, the exploitation model, of course, need to be better understand, also considering the resources, as I told you before. And then the desert guides. Also here we have the opportunity to map the actual number of desert guides along Arrat al-Harra. So 150 units were recorded. Regarding the kites, of course, there is available bibliography on what has been already done. And we also had the opportunity in collaboration with the French team led by Guillaume Charloux to also investigate the kites close to Dumat al-Jandal. And finally, the tombs. The tombs panorama is also incredibly interesting because the location of these structures is once again going from west to east all along Arrat al-Harra and also leading to the east. And this is an interesting point for us because if the turret tombs, the tumuli tombs, this funerary panorama can be dated in the later period, the Bronze Age, this will be a first link for the study of the relationship between the emerging of northern Arabia oasis and Mesopotamia. In this case, we have here a huge necropolis not far from Qurayat, and here an example of a turret tomb from the area of Tamriyat, which is here to the northeast of Dumat al-Jandal. So according to the ground truth check, so the field survey, the architecture of these structures suggests a funerary landscape dated to the 3rd and 2nd millennium BC, perhaps. And the location of the tomb can also suggest a first glimpse of what will be the caravan trade linking northern Arabia with the Levant and Mesopotamia. So from a general point of view, the Arrat al-Harra, which is part of the Arrat al-Sham, of course, is part of a wider context that involves also southern Syria, Jordan, and all the way down to Yemen, western Saudi Arabia. We have now the opportunity find comparisons with the recent excavation in the region of Al-Ula, but we can also test this kind of approach by adopting the false color imagery in other areas, such as Harrat Uteima, where we did a test of adopting this kind of imagery technology. And of course, even here in the eastern limit of the Harrat region, we had the opportunity to record several archaeological evidence not far from Hail, the main modern city. So almost 5,000 archaeological sites were also recorded here in their paleo environment. And so this is an example of this geoarchaeological map provided by this approach. So also here we have this kind of compound or tombs, both tumuli tombs, turret tombs, and the well-known types that are widespread along the western part of the Arabian Peninsula. In the case of Harrat Uteima, also these peculiar structures that are now very well known thanks to the recent excavation in Al-Ula, the Mustatil. So these huge rectangular ceremonial buildings dated to the moist Holocene phase. So the millennia between the 8th and 6th millennium BC. So contemporary to the Harrat al-Harra paleo landscapes that we are trying to define remotely. So to conclude this first part of remote sensing devoted to the prehistoric evidence, we move eastwards. Eastwards, we still can see some of these Neolithic structures, very few in comparison to the Harrat al-Harra. But what is important is the presence of turret tomb, funerary structures, usually following, as you can see, a pattern which is the course of the main wadis going to the Mesopotamian alluvium, and then suggesting some kind of roads linking northern Arabia with Mesopotamia. The location also of the tomb is peculiar because most of the time they are located in the very vicinity of the wadi slope. So they are visible from the ground, from the wadi. It can be a sort of track moving along these dry areas. The area under field and remote survey is the area of Tamriyat, where we are proceeding also with the field ground check. And this area, of course, is quite interesting because is located along the main wadis leading to Mesopotamia. So this is this could be the key to understand the development of the historical caravan routes. So we came now to the historical period, and in particular to the effort to try to understand the link between Adummatu, which apparently, based on the archaeological evidence and sources, emerged in the 8th century BC, and Mesopotamia. So this is, again, the very reason why the project was born, the definition of Adummatu. And before we go inside the oasis, I would like to show you the very recent data regarding the plausible caravan routes linking Adummatu with the east, the Mesopotamian alluvium. So within the remote sensing campaigns devoted to the recognition of prehistoric evidence, just 2 potential archaeological sites dated to the historical period were identified. The first one is this one, not far from Harar. Still, we are in the al-Jawf, within the al-Jawf region borders, and the second one, which is in the region nowadays called al-Buyutat. So as you can see from a remote sensing approach, the type of the structures typologically are very different from the prehistoric ones. So these are potential sites that can be dated to a later period than the Neolithic and Bronze Age structures that now are very well known. So the first site was visited last season in September, between September and October 2021, and it turned out that this is not an ancient archaeological site, but most probably this is a modern site dated to the early 90s, probably 1930s, so contemporary to the first effort of the Saudi states to perform a geological analysis for petroleum, and probably this is linked to the Aramco company. So it's a modern compound, basically, which has got nothing to do with the ancient context. So at least the procedure now can also consider modern structures to be avoided by remote before the ground truth check. But the second site, Al-Buyutat is a site which is located in the eastern desert of al-Jawf, a dry area nonetheless inhabited by several Bedouins encampments. It's not an easy path to reach Al-Buyutat from Sakaka. Our track went through the main wadis in order to imagine also the easier way to get to these archaeological sites. And it's located in the vicinity of several paleo lakes, small paleo lakes or sabkhas, which are these ones here, all around the site, here and here. The site is at the foot of this wadi slope here, so in some way protected, and is characterized by several types of structures. This is one of the satellite imagery utilized for the preliminary analysis. So we have the main structures are this sort of caravanserai, rectangular structures, east-west oriented, but there are also several wells all around the site, as well as siloi, tombs, basins, several other structures eventually linked with this encampment. Of course, this is not an urban site. Apparently, the best definition is literally encampment, which is a word carefully chosen because encampment is one of the evidence quoted in the Assyrian sources when they talk about the Arabs of the desert. So on field, this is how the structures look like, in particular the caravanserai, which very much suggest the idea of a caravan spot along the route between Dumat al-Jandal and the east. No excavations were performed. The structures, of course, are made of dry masonry stone techniques. No comparisons with Dumat al-Jandal can be found from an architectonic point of view. Here you have the sequence of tombs. Here another example. This is one of the basins identified in the area, and one of the several wells. Despite the presence of Bedouins community all around Al-Buyutat, these wells are not used anymore. So this is quite clear. But the technology of wells could suggest a date that can shift both from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, because this kind of technology, which are small wells with no more than 1 meter in the diameter of the mouth, with just few stone courses, very much suggest the Bronze Age wells recognized at Shagik and Rajajil, Bronze Age site of al-Jawf, dated to the 3rd to 2nd millennium BC. So this is a kind of tricky situation to define. It is because from the material point of view, in particular, the pottery emerged from first surface collection is quite interesting. We were able to define 3 different fabrics. All of them have comparisons with the fabrics from Dumat al-Jandal. In particular, the first one here and the second one, which are extremely common both during the Assyrian phase of Adummatu and also the Nabatean phase of the city, while the third one should be still investigated. So after this first survey, which was a one-day survey, the site seems to be promising, could be a candidate for a first archaeological site, an actual caravan site along the road between northern Arabia and Mesopotamia. We can also avoid some interpretation. I mean, the site, the caravan sites are very much abundant during the early Abbasid period, when the Darb Zubaydah road was created between Baghdad and the holy cities of Western Arabia. So at least looking at the early Islamic sites along the Darb Zubaydah, we can exclude the possibility that it is an Islamic site. So here you have the Al-Qa main fort, or the great water basin of Shihiyat, and also Faid further south, with also his domestic units to host pilgrims, and once again the huge water basins and the fortification wall. So my point is that from an architectonic point of view, also Rabada, the Al-Buyutat site cannot be considered an Islamic site. So we should check for more historical, pre-Islamic historical evidence. Well then, after this remote introduction to the al-Jawf panorama, we can move now to Adummatu, to the archaeological site, to the oasis, and try to define main issues regarding the chronology and main occupational phases of the site. Dumat al-Jandal, so now is one of the best preserved archaeological sites in Saudi Arabia, mostly considering the Islamic structures, the so-called Umar Mosque, the castle of Marid, and the Hayatira village, with also the huge agricultural area, which is marked and dotted by wells and canals, still quite much preserved. So to introduce the archaeological site of Adummatu and the main topic, which is the excavation of the Assyrian phase of the city, or the Kedarite phase of the city, let me introduce in 1 minute the general context in which Adummatu appears linked to the ancient Mesopotamia during the Neo-Assyrian period. So we have several sources, of course, talking about the Kedarite, the tribe of Kedar, both from the Neo-Assyrian point of view, but also in the biblical text. Kedar is the most quoted tribes associated with the Arab queens. But we also have mention of the Sabaeans in the Neo-Assyrian annals and of Kade. So it means that the Neo-Assyrian kings were quite aware of the geography of the Arabian Peninsula, and when they talked about Kedar and Adummatu, they are referring to northern Arabia. Sources are very well known, of course. The first mention of the Arab in the famous Battle of Karkar with the troops led by King Dindibu, but also the mention of Queen Sabibi and Samsi with the first iconographic evidence from the palace of Tiglat-Pileser III. And also we have the mention of the caravan of Taima and Saba taken by the king of Suhu in Kindanu. In the middle 8th century BC, we have the mention from modern Abu Kemal of a caravan coming from Taima and Saba going to the middle Euphrates. The question is if these caravans going from Taima to Assyria passed through the Levant or passed through Dumat al-Jandal and from here reaching Assyria. So other sources very well known are of course the one of Sargon II, which refer of several tribes and state clearly about the Arab people as communities living outside cities, not knowing the city that never paid tribute to anyone, and these were overthrown by Sargon II once and for all. But also we have Sennacherib, which was the only Assyrian king that actually reached Adummatu and took the city in 688. And then Assurbanipal and also Esarhaddon. Again, we have a mention of Arab tribes of northern Arabia. So the powerful king Assurbanipal is of course one of the main sources regarding the Arabs, not only from a literal point of view, but also from an iconographic point of view, because everyone knows of the relief from the Arab room in the palace, the northern palace of Assurbanipal, which depict the Assyrian army fighting and destroying the Arab army defending this famous encampment. The Assyrian armies destroyed the encampment before reaching the city of Adummatu. So in this relief, of course, the powerful Assyrians are defeating the Arabs. A few of them are still fighting, others are running away, others are despaired in the middle of the battlefield with no armor, no armies at all, while others are almost dead or already dead. Well, so as I said before, the Assyrians not only quoted Dumat al-Jandal, we have also the famous mention of two of the Sabian Mukarrib, Sargon II quoted Yatamar Watar, Mukarrib of Saba, and Sennacherib quoted also Karibil Watar, the Mukarrib of Saba. And apart also here from these textual mentions, we also have archaeological evidence already evidenced by Denpots regarding the link between Karibil Watar and Sennacherib by paying tribute to the Neo-Assyrian kings, and also we have iconographic link between the two regions. The southern Arabians also adopted iconographies coming from the Neo-Assyrian regions. And even from Oman, as we said, we have a mention of Assurbanipal defeating and receiving tribute by the king of Kade, which is Pade, king of Kade, which was in Izki, and paid tribute to King Assurbanipal. We know that Kade is quoted in Pliny the Elder as a tribe of Eastern Arabia, and so we can state Kade as an Eastern Arabia country. All these mentions are important for us because there is one last evidence linking these regions with the Neo-Assyrian Mesopotamia, which is the pottery. The carinated ware, the Neo-Assyrian carinated ware is the element connecting these areas. This peculiar pottery tradition, the carinated ware, was also imitated and adopted not only in southern Arabia during the century of the reign of Karibil-Watar, but also in eastern Arabia. Also here we have the small carinated painted ware, which is a clear imitation of Neo-Assyrian models, and most recently this peculiar material culture was identified in Dumat al-Jandal with a huge Assyrian corpus that clearly imitate Neo-Assyrian models. So as you can see, the whole region has got this phase of sharing of this technology, which of course is an effort to imitate the Neo-Assyrian course, an effort made by local sovereigns, the Kedarite or the Sabaeans, to imitate the Neo-Assyrian course. And this is the main element that can help us to link Dumat al-Jandal with Mesopotamia. So coming to the oasis, the very oasis, starting from 2010, starting from 2010 with the participation to the field activities of the CNRS and the team led by Guillaume Charloux, we can say that the oasis was investigated in the very heart of the oasis, where the Italian project started in 2009 with the excavation around the Marit Castle. The excavation of the western enclosures, which is the small settlement located in the northwestern part of the oasis, fortifying the entrance to the oasis. Here you can see part of the excavated walls and where the French project worked up to 2018. And finally, there is a third area under investigation. Actually, very few test probes were conducted up now, which is the Suneymiyat area in between the Kasr Marid and the western enclosure. Suneymiyat is the supposed area for necropolises. Dumat al-Jandal saw some excavation activities during the 80s when Saudi archaeologists Adayel, most of all, and Al-Muaykil performed archaeological activities. So we have a good documentation regarding the settlement, but not regarding the necropolises. The only traces of necropolises were found in Suneymiyat in the middle 80s by Adayel. So we are trying to investigate also this area for such a purpose, the discovery of the necropolises of Dumat al-Jandal. But now we can focus on the very core of the oasis, so between sector A and sector B, which are the two residential areas revolving around the Marit Castle. And this is the very first topographic relief of the oasis done in 2009. And after 13 years of excavation, the activities went on by opening a huge sector of the eastern settlement, mostly the Nabatean settlement, as well as several trenches within the Islamic core of the site. The trenches that allowed us to obtain a stratigraphic sequence starting from the Neo-Assyrian period or Kedarite period, the 8th century BC, up to today. Basically, the site was occupied without any huge abandonment, as you will see from the chronostratigraphic sequence of the site. And also, what is important is the agricultural area dotted by qanats and wells. So the main archaeological activities were conducted inside the Marit Castle in the eastern sector at the western foot of the Marit Castle and the western side of the Omar Mosque. These were quite promising results because from here we have the discovery of the first Neo-Assyrian materials, so the carinated ware dated to the 8th and 7th century BCE, and then from the general excavation activities, I can show you the complete stratigraphic sequence, the main archaeological phases, which include materials from the 6th century BCE with a Taymanitic text and some iconographies which found comparisons with the time during the 6th century. We also have C14 dates and materials, peculiar pots decorated by cuneiform elements dated to the 4th century BC. We also have a 3rd to 2nd century BC materials with the Roman terra sigillata orientale and Curotrophos example of statuary. And then we have the huge Nabatean phase, which starts in the 1st century CE and last up to the Roman Provincial Arabia period. So during the 1st and 2nd century, we have many artifacts that allow to connect Adummatu also with the Roman eastern provinces, but also with the east. Finally, the last documented archaeological phase is the one of the late pre-Islamic period. Apparently, according to the material culture and C14 datings, the most recent ones, this late archaeological phase can be dated between the 6th century and the 8th century, so the first Islamic centuries. Among these materials, there are, of course, many others that are coming out and we are studying right now. For example, this handle from an amphora with a stamp of Rhodian wine trade. This is a rose with a Greek name, which is a clear stamp for a production of amphoras of the 2nd and 3rd century for the trading of wine. We also have many pottery elements that allow us to recognize trade with the Levant during the 6th century. So from a material culture point of view, the oasis is giving us many important material for the definition of each historical phase. We will see now some of these. So, of course, the very first period, the most interesting period, is the one related to the Assyrian, to the Arab queens and the Kedarite. The excavation conducted since 2016 outside the Omar Mosque finally allow us to recognize this very first occupational phase of the oasis. Although the structures are not very well preserved, the material assemblages is characterized by the presence of this peculiar carinated ware, which found comparisons in the late Neo-Assyrian pottery from the main Neo-Assyrian settlements. Up to now, we have almost 1,000 fragments of this kind of tradition. No complete shapes, no defined structures. The main problem is that Dumat al-Jandal historical core was a site continuously occupied. So the ancient structures most probably are gone or completely gone. So it is extremely difficult to recognize complete architectonic context. Anyway, the richness of the material is clear. We have most of all food consumption pottery, but also storage vessels, all of them comparable to the Neo-Assyrian phases. Also, the possibility to extend the excavation in Suneymiyat in search of the necropolis is giving us some unexpected news, because the main soundings we opened in 2016 18 in Suneymiyat, in fact, did not provide funerary evidence, but urban evidence. That is still once again the carinated wear. So in this case, we have probably to reconsider the actual extension of the urban settlement of Adummatu al-Jandal. And this is something we will investigate very soon. Also from the Castle of Marid, with the study of the materials from the Italian excavation, and also considering the materials emerged from the Al-Muaykil excavation in the 80s, seems to look once again at Neo-Assyrian carinated materials. So the Assyrian panorama is something that we are still developing in the oasis. Regarding the 6th century BC, but anyway, the role of Adummatu, like a caravan trade between the Levant, the East and Western Arabia, we also have contacts with Taima. We can recognize some Sanai ware, typical of, from Taima, but we also have iconographies that found comparisons with the Nabonidus Taima, and also at least one script, this fragment of an inscription in Taimanitic. These are all elements arising, showing us the link between Taima and Assyria, trying to demonstrate the validity of the text of the king of Kindanu and Suhu, who took the caravan coming from Saba and Taima. So that stratigraphy goes on in different trenches. In this case, in the excavation outside the Omar Mosque, we have a continuous sequence of archaeological data leading to the 4th century BC and up to the Nabatean period, when we have the great development of Adummatu, which is now known as Duma in the Nabatean sources, or Dumata in the Roman ones. So the oasis was in the 1st century part of the Nabatean kingdom, and then part of the Provincia Arabia. We have mention of the Legio III Cyrenaica, and it is undated stone stele from Adummatu al-Jandal, where the centurion Flavius Dionysus made this stela for the Legio III Cyrenaica. And also in the vicinity of the oasis, outside the oasis of Adummatu al-Jandal, thanks to the surveys conducted by the French colleagues, in particular by Guillaume Charloux, but also Leila Neme, we have the evidences of other Nabatean frequentation of the oasis, such as centurions, cavalrymen, or common names that were carved in shelters outside the oasis, but now leading to the west through the Wadi al-Sirhan, leading to Jordan. So the oasis appears to have lived two main archaeological phases, two main historical phases, the Assyrian one and the Nabatean one. In the middle, we have archaeological artifacts, we have data, but still not really clear of a proper development of the oasis between the Assyrian period and the Nabatean one. So Duma and then Dumata became a part of the Provincia Arabia. Regarding this period, most of the evidence, I mean the Nabatean and the Roman one, came from the excavation of Trench 1 on the eastern side of the Marid castle. So starting from 2009 up to 2016, the archaeological activities focused on this residential area. In particular, one of the main promising structures, the building A, the very first building identified in Trench 1, gave us many information regarding the Nabatean period. This is most probably a rich private houses that gave us more than 30,000 archaeological pottery shards. The building was defined probably by a huge courtyard bordered by porticos with a southern room here with probably peculiar residential function. Actually, the hypothesis is that this building could be also a religious building, and we know from sources about the cults in Dumat al-Jandal. But the material culture, the pottery, is most of all devoted to food consumption and daily life activities. Several soundings were also opened inside Building A as a first attempts to recognize a pre-Nabatean phase in Dumat al-Jandal. But still, in Trench 1, the soundings inside Building A gave us, again, Nabatean materials. So it appears that we can recognize several Nabatean phases. For example, within the southern room of Building A, a collapse of another building mixed with the pottery dated to the 1st century BC seems to suggest several Nabatean phases within the oasis. Among the elements, so we have, of course, a rich pottery assemblage of the Nabatean period, which found comparisons from Jordan. We have a good collection of imported materials from Jordan, as well as local fine ware and a huge amount of common ware. So pottery tradition very well established with very precise comparisons with Jordan during the 1st century BC up to the 2nd century CE. Among the evidence coming from the Building A, I would like also to show you this small Kurotrophos deity, which was found inside one of the test probes in Building 1, which is a testimony of the cults adopted in Dumat al-Jandal, linked, of course, to the Roman or Hellenistic tradition, as well as other elements such as this god Bess head stamped in several fragments, pottery fragments emerged. So this is another research line, the one to define the cults in Dumat al-Jandal. Of course, comparisons, I'm sorry if there is some disorder in this slide, but of course, comparisons for the Kurotrophos are extremely frequent during the Hellenistic and Roman period in the whole Mediterranean area. Okay, let's go on with the last excavation data. Very briefly, several test probes were conducted inside the castle of Marid, also for the management of the castle and to verify the state of preservation of the building for future restoration activities. So in this case, we have to quote the 1986 excavation of al-Muaykil inside one of the castle structures, which yield evidence dated to the late pre-Islamic period. Among the data emerged from al-Muaykil, we have a reference of mosaics in white, red, and black tessera that are reported by Khalil al-Muaykil. Our excavation trenches inside the castles also put into light several others data, not only related to the late pre-Islamic period, but also related most probably to the 2nd century BC, with glazed ware, Nabatean common ware, Roman terra sigillata orientale, all of them referred to the centuries during which the oasis was to become part of the Nabatean kingdom. Within the very middle of the courtyard of the castle, we also had the opportunity to identify proper Nabatean structures associated once again with materials dated from the 2nd century BC, the Terra Sigillata Orientale, up to the 2nd century CE, with this peculiar so-called eggshell or luxury ware imported from Petra, as well as common ware, local ware, typical of these centuries. And last but not least, also evidence of the late pre-Islamic period. So finally, we had the opportunity to recover the mosaics identified by Al-Muaykil, this opus tessellatum, which can be dated to the 6th century, and is the material testimony of the historical phase of Uqaydir ibn Abd al-Malik al-Kindi. So the Kinda king, allied of Heraclio and of Byzantium, that is commonly known to be the last king of Dumat al-Jandal before the advent of Islam. And in fact, the very last phase that we have the opportunity to investigate is the very late pre-Islamic years. The excavation outside the Omar Mosque went on during the years, and apart from the C14 datings that is still to be analyzed, some materials can be introduced, in particular this small handbell in silver. A kind of liturgic handbell in silver, which found comparisons with a Coptic context, and could be the very first archaeological element to identify a Christian phase in Dumat al-Jandal before the advent of Islam. According to the sources, in fact, this Uqaydir Kinda king was a Christian king allied to Byzantium and one of the main opponents to Prophet Muhammad, so that at least 3 military campaigns had to be conducted to conquer the oasis. So, of course, to find this kind of material in a mosque context is strange. This is not a bell used for animals. The shape and the material, silver, of course, suggest a liturgic or important, anyway, elitarian use. We know that bells are forbidden in Islam religions, as well as we know about the first usage of bells. And this is from a letter written by this Ferranius, a priest in Carthage, that wrote to Aegypius in Naples, accounting him about the usage, the sonoram campanam, the usage of a small liturgic bell to call priest during the hours. So we have at least a reference regarding the first usage of this kind of bells in a context that, according to C14 data, that must be verified with other datings, is most probably dated between the late pre-Islamic years, but maybe also at the beginning of Islam. So this is part of the research that should be carefully investigated during next seasons. And also the idea of a Christian presence in Dumat al-Jandal is well known thanks to the sources, but also thanks to Khalil al-Muaykil, who was the first quoting J. King to try to demonstrate that the Omar Mosque, the so-called Omar Mosque, was a church. By stressing the position of the minaret. The minaret, which is located in the Qibla wall, along the Qibla wall, should be located on the opposite wall of the ancient section of the mosque. So I won't go further than this, but anyway, to conclude, the Christian phase of Dumat al-Jandal is supported also by the results coming from the last surveys of the French project presence in Dumat al-Jandal, by the discovery and publication by Leila Neme of an important engraved text a few kilometers outside Rumat al-Jandal, circa 15 kilometers to the northwest of this Hagab, son of Salama, that in the year of the Provincia Arabia 443, so 548-49, marked his passage along the Wadi Sirhan and dedicated this graffito to the Christian god. The inscription is accompanied by 2 crosses. And so here we have not only the first material evidence, but also the first textual evidence of this late pre-Islamic phase that is still to be fully investigated. So I'm sorry if I took more time than expected, and thank you to be here. That's it.
Thank you very much, Romolo, for this complete presentation of both excavation and remote sensing. It is very enthusiastic, and I am sure there could be some comments or questions from the audience. So do not hesitate to activate your microphone and or your camera, or you can send also question or remarks texting in the place. I will have some questions, but maybe some colleagues will have.
Yeah, well, once again, I'm sorry for the timing. Anyway, I see that Sophie wrote something regarding the survey.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, did you detect an evolution of the occupation of the occupied landscape through time? Yes, yes. The archaeological sites in the Harrat are very much too many to show you all of them, but in some case we have apparently stratigraphic sequences. In particular, we can see funerary structures built above compounds. Clearly, or sometimes we have tombs built above desert kites. So there is an overimposition very often. So most probably we can imagine a chronological sequence, but also it's possible to have not only a vertical stratigraphic sequence, but also a horizontal stratigraphic sequence. So the point here is to also define the evolution of the paleo-hydrographic regime. So yes, and there is still very much to do on this regard.
I have personally one question and one remark. The question is, did you identify pottery that have been imported from the Assyrian center, as you can say, or it's only imitations of shapes?
Yeah, this is one of the main points. Thank you for the question. Apparently not. Apparently all the materials are locally made. Sometimes we can recognize a surface treatment imitating the silver cups. But according to the most recent archaeometric studies we did, and performed also by Simona Berardino, which is here, apparently all the fabrics are local. And the same fabric can be also utilized during the Assyrian period and the Nabatean period, as well as the fabrics common in the Nabatean period and the Islamic period. So the sources are local, but the models are clearly foreign models.
It is not so surprising, because if we compare with the case of the Levantine material, in most cases, pottery, it's like common production, so there is no clear reason for importation. Most importation come from the very elite material, you know, so it's not that surprising, but we never know, so that's why the purpose of my question. I have one remark. It was very important, I think, the remote sensing in those desertic places, the internal places because it opened a lot of data and questions about the ancient routes leading to the Levant. It's quite well known. Leading to Mesopotamia, it's a beginning, but I am very enthusiastic about this. Maybe you know we discussed about this before. Probably there should be something also to the east. But with the problem is the dunes are covering everything, and I don't know if there are some possibilities of remote sensing when dunes are everywhere. But at least for the point you should, I think, that in this site with the well, if I remember well, it will be interesting to have a clear datation of the site. But despite datation, even if the results are a little bit recent, the place was accurate for a well. So if maybe it could be also like evidence, even small evidence, that it would have been the same case before in earlier periods. So at least the aquifer it is possible to reach it at this time. And if in first millennium BC or CE people knows this and discovered it, maybe it was also the same before.
Yes, that's true. You think that Al-Buyutat is a valley, is a deep valley, so there are several areas where the aquifer could be easily reached. Okay. And that is the nomad, the Bedouins are there right now, a very lot. So it's an attractive point.
Okay, and probably for a long time.
Yes.
I see another question coming in the discussion box. No, it is Sophie. Oh, yes, it is from Sophie.
Regarding the Neolithic, you recovered it when surveying. Did you identify links with? Yes, we have some links with other areas. In particular, regarding the arrowheads, we have the facade points. This is one element. And regarding the assemblages from northern Nefud, most of them seems to be Arabian. I mean, we have many comparisons with the Juba, the Paleo Lakes, the Juba sites. So local technologies. From Mesopotamia, no. The only at the very moment, the only element of comparison is facade. From the subtype of the northern UA, no. I can. I'm not expert in this, Sophie. I'm sorry. I will check, or I will send you this material so you can look at that. Because now we have we still are lacking of studies in the lithic materials. So now we are focusing on the historical periods regarding the materials. We are going on with the remote sensing, but we are available for collaboration regarding the Neolithic materials. This is for you to know. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer properly regarding the subtype of facade.
Oh, probably with some cooperation with a specialist of this kind of material. Are there other questions or comments?
May I?
Of course, please.
Do you have any conclusions about relationships between tombs and sedentary habitats? In fact, the impression I have got through this, through the pictures, is that the tombs are not near the city and that there is no relationship with it, but there is a relationship to routes, to travelways and tombs. Well, is it, do you have any other conclusion, or my?
Yes, yes, I fully understand your point. In fact, it is exactly like this. At least for the third and second millennium in northern Arabia, we can see that tombs or necropolises are far from settlements and following specific paths. So these tombs are related to nomad communities or semi-nomad communities, but not to permanent settlers. This is a model also valid in southern Arabia, not only for the Bronze Age, but for also the historical period, where the turret tombs are markers, cultural markers of nomadic peoples. On the contrary, settlers has got their own necropolises, cities of the dead, close to the cities of the living. So this seems to be a quite common pattern in the Arabian Peninsula.
When you speak about nomad people and their tombs, can you make any conclusions about groups of people by the observation of the necropolises?
Well, it is possible. First of all, I would refer to them as pastoral, most probably communities. And regarding their number, their complexity, if we are talking about families, clan, or tribes, I cannot be so specific. But anyway, the tombs seems to be arranged in clusters. So yes, it's possible that we have a large number of people arranged maybe in clan, as well as the architecture of the tomb. Usually the necropolises, at least here in Tamriyat, has got one huge, one big and principal structure surrounded by small tombs. So it's clear that there is some kind of vertical arrangement of this society.
Is there another question? I think there is something in the box.
Thank you, Sophie, for the suggestion. Yes, of course. And then during your presentation, you mentioned a link between the Bronze Age tombs you surveyed and Mesopotamia. Would say us more about this? Yes. No. I meant that by surveying the Bronze Age tombs to the east of Dumat al-Jandal, we get closer to Mesopotamia. So if these necropolises are leading to the east, there could be some kind of contact between these nomadic pastoral communities and the east. But anyway, this was the starting point for the historical caravan trade remote sensing analysis. So it's more a methodological approach than a clear and demonstrated link between the two areas.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Maybe we are a little bit late, so some people want to finish. If there are no further questions, I thank you once again, Romolo, for your great presentation and participation. I hope to see you soon on the field, here or there. And the next lecture of Arabia will lead us in a different period of the Paleolithics. It will be Yamandu Hilbert, the 13th of July. Thank you, everybody, for your audience. Thank you again, Romolo.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophie, also.
Bye.
Bye.